one of the things in the title of this stream is Mythic Plus drama.
Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
I think it's time to cover the Mythic Plus drama.
Yes.
Matt, could you give me a quick once over of what's going on, then we can get into the analysis, because this is an interesting one.
Yes, so essentially your keystones that are left in your bag because you don't have time to do them or kind of couldn't really be bothered, yeah, they'll start degrading now. So they're reverting the Shadowlands formula. So it is the BFA formula, which is if you don't complete a 15 keystone every other week, it goes down to a 13 after 2 weeks. That means if you're one of those people who has a lot of alts and you're kind of you're chilling, you're like, oh yeah, I'll do that. It's not a good week. It's maybe 2 bad weeks in a row for my tanks I don't like. You know, I don't know. You play a warrior, you don't like necrotic. Like, okay, I'll leave it out for a bit, or even if you don't have time, well, too bad. You're going to be set back a little bit. And that's,
yeah. Now the thing is, what if you are a player, and I think this is what Blizzard are thinking. And this is actually because I saw a Wowhead comment, I think it was on this post, and it was somebody who didn't know that you can downgrade your key. And I have a suspicion that Blizzard actually, that they may have thought, because somebody in those comments basically said, I was stuck with this key for 4 weeks, or with keys for 4 weeks that I could not complete. And that's obviously an issue. Now, to those of us who are more clued into the game, we know that you can go in and you can just go in, go out, you can manually degrade your key. A lot of people have been asking for more control over their keys, which could solve things like this. So I have to wonder, whenever Blizzard go through and, whenever Blizz actually looks at the, the overall player data, do they see loads of people that get up to these keys and then they just kind of stop because they've hit a wall? Because now the situation is that player, the next week, if they don't time their key, then it's going to decrease more. So do you think that could be what Blizzard are doing?
Okay, so I kind of do think that's some of it. Some of it is that for sure. It's because it is like, if you think about it from the user experience kind of angle, manually depleting the key feels really stupid and wrong, because you're essentially failing it on purpose.
Yes, a game, it should never be like that. That's the right thing to do.
Yeah, so I really wish they would give some sort of explanation for this, that we can kind of understand the thought process. That's probably some of it. Although, it's really hard to say, but it just feels like the problem is that you don't have enough control over your keystone. And they're going, okay, we'll just wrestle it off you. When, I'm thinking, if they're not trying to force people into lower keystones that they can't do, then the simpler one, and obviously this is asking them for implementations of stuff, but why can't you put your keystone into the slot and then just go from +2 to the max level of the key? That would be significantly better, I think, for most situations for people.
Yeah, why is there not a broker character? You just get, you go to the broker and you can do fun, interesting things with your key. Maybe, I'm not, and I guess neither of us are big Mythic Plus first players. We are rating players, but something like that to me just seems to make a lot of sense. And it seems like that is a system we should have, and not really something like this, where what's made people a bit pissed is it's just that thing. If you don't log in and do, those keys in your characters, they're just going to degrade and fall down over time. So you're just going to feel like it's all slipping through your fingers. And I think that is getting us a bit closer to that feeling of weekly chores and mandatory things like, oh, I should really go and do this key because, I don't want it to fall over. And that's just some of that mandatory feeling content that I think people don't like. But I also think this doesn't matter too much. For most people. It barely matters, actually.
Absolutely not.
How many people are really doing all of that on all of their alts?
Yeah, and you can just do someone else's key and you're fine. It's just like, I guess it could be frustrating if you get a really nice key, especially if you're up in the 20 or at the 15 and you're thinking, okay, well, I want to get my 226 gear from this and I want to do this specific dungeon, and then you log in and it's a week lower. That would be like...
Yeah, it's like it feels minorly bad.
Yeah.
And I think it's actually getting at something that is a source of some community, you could even say drama, and that is people being displeased at a change based on principle and then the people who modulate that through the actual real-world impact of that change. This is a situation where I think it's a bit of a dumb solution to a problem that shouldn't exist. So to me, I'm like, well, I've lost a little bit of faith because this seems like a bit silly. But for a lot of other people, they're going to say, well, this is just a band-aid solution and it basically doesn't matter anyway. So, why would we really worry? To that, I'd then say, well, it's the thinking behind the thing that's maybe the issue, and maybe we should have a way to modify our keys, and that'll make the game better. So I think it's that thing of fundamentally, like, you know, stepping back and really trying to almost not react to things like this on a point of principle and only to think about outcome. But I think that really does miss so much because it's the principles that I think really do matter. And I think that's why this is something that's really resonated with a bunch of the Mythic Plus community, where it's the principle they don't like.
Yeah, I mean, it's a case of if you scroll down here for the through the comments, the vast majority of it is just no one asked for this. Why? Why have we done this? It was fine before. What's gone wrong? And I think it is just like, it feels like tinkering that, you know, I guess it's a matter of they probably don't want to tell us why, because it's a data-driven change. That's what I imagine. So it's like every other change they make, they kind of go, okay, so here, you know, we're changing, obviously not specifics, but hey, we're doing a passive of these Coven ability tunings, and then, you know, developers asked about it, go, yeah, it's for this and this and this and this and this. Here's all stuff, but if this one's like, hello, here's a change, no comment, kind of implies that it's like it's a bit of bitter medicine for the game, and the community's going to be like, get away.
This reminds me of something. I'll keep this brief. Don't worry, I will keep this bit brief, but I think it is important. It reminds me of a story we covered last year on the news channel. And it was basically, there was somebody who was a producer at DICE, who are the Battlefield studio, who was responding to a change that to the Battlefield community was highly, highly controversial. They basically rebalanced all of the guns in order to change the time to kill. So how many shots it actually takes to kill a bad guy. Now, that's because the newest, or Battlefield 5, had a very low time to kill. So if you were a really good Battlefield player, you could slay the hell out of people. But if you were a noob, and the time to kill is really fast in the game, then, oh dear, you spawn, you die. You are not happy, you leave the game. The churn rate goes up. And this producer at DICE, ex-producer at DICE, basically said, listen, this is the type of hyper data-driven change that a developer can make, and basically won't really tell you too much about their reasoning. And what will happen is they'll make that change, they will wait X amount of months, and they will see how it panned out. And I think that's just a really good example, because the vocal online community was absolutely pissed. I would say probably high 80% of them did not like the change that DICE were making. Yet, DICE decided to make that change based on the numbers that they have, which is just numbers that we cannot get access to.
Yeah, I mean, didn't they revert that later? Was it that they reverted a little bit later? Partial? Yeah.
Partial.
So I think that kind of tells it was... maybe they made the right move, but it was they overshot a little bit and dialed it back. But I guess it's a thing where it's when it comes to data-driven stuff, and obviously this is business. It's where business versus creativity and vision get kind of muddled up in game design. But it's like, that was probably the correct decision, because it was, you know, the player base comes first to whoever's making that decision. So it is difficult. An unhappy community isn't necessarily bad for you unless you break them. I think, I guess the bitter medicine kind of analogy maybe works a bit better than I intended there.
Yeah.